Looking for a strategic sword and Heavenquaker spear guide, but all you can find are crazy DPS rotations without any proper instructions? Say no more, because this is Shu with your all-in-one BELLSTRIKE UMBRA beginner guide. To master these weapons, you first need to understand two core martial arts mechanics. One is how to trigger high bleed or blood burst as shown in DPS calculations, and two is how to maintain your damage over time enhancement. Why these two? The DOT enhancement, also known as the Soul Shaken debuff, increases the high bleed damage the target takes, and high bleed is the highest damage type you can deal with a strategic sword. To put it simply, the more high bleed you trigger while DOT enhancement is active, the higher your overall DPS will be. So, how do you deal high bleed damage? Each time you apply 5 stacks of bleed to your target, using either the strategic sword's special skill or the crisscrossing sword's follow-up attack from the Sword Horizon Inner Way will clear all bleed stacks and deal a massive burst of high bleed damage. Thanks to the newest update, you can now also trigger high bleed using the Tier 4 Wolfchaser's Art Inner Way alongside the Heavenquaker Spear's special skill. Now that we have the mechanics down, let's look at attributes and attunements. To maximize this build, you need to focus on 3 must-have attributes: power, max physical attack, and momentum or flat affinity rate. Why? Let's break it down. Power grants both max and min physical attack. Because of strategic sword talents, power also awards extra affinity rate, and it further boosts max physical attack through Heavenquaker spear talents. Max physical attack directly increases your final bleed damage penetration, affinity damage from high bleed, and the damage over time from standard bleeding effects. Since you are stacking max physical attack, affinity rate is a must-have to scale that damage higher, and momentum conveniently gives you both max physical attack and affinity rate. For your sub-attributes, the god tier choices are Art of Sword damage boost and damage boost against bosses for PvE, or damage boost against players for PvP. For PvE Attunements, roll physical penetration on your weapon and accessories. Each maxed roll gives you roughly a 2.4% overall damage increase. On your armor pieces, go for bleeding damage boost. Each max value boosts overall damage by about 2.5%. For PvP Attunements on your disc, look for if special skill hits the same target 3 or more times, recovers 25 endurance. This gives you the flexibility to continuously chain special skills. Alternatively, use if the final slash of a martial arts skill hits a staggered or controlled unit, it applies 2 stacks of bleed and briefly immobilizes them, which opens up devastating follow-up combos. On pendants, the best option is when a charged skill hits a unit with below 30% chi, it knocks them airborne. However, if you find it difficult to constantly cast heavy charged dashes, you can swap to charged skill. Drifting Landstrike applies 1 stack of vulnerability when it hits a non-defending unit. This works perfectly if you want to kite your enemy and trade damage using tenacity effects to set up your burst combo. Next up, gear sets. If you're a PvE only player, grab the recommended Hawkwing set. These pieces give you an extra 3.7% affinity rate, while boosting your physical attack by up to 10% whenever you trigger an affinity hit. For PvP players, you can keep the Hawkwing weapon and accessory sets, but swap your main armor pieces to the Calm Waters set. Calm Waters restores endurance and HP on a perfect dodge, scaling higher the lower your health gets for your inner ways. PvE players should equip Morale Chant, Sword Horizon, Wolfchaser's Art, and Insightful Strike. You can use this setup comfortably throughout the entire game. And for PvP players, simply replace Morale Chant and Insightful Strike with Evasive Charge and Fury Harvest. All right, let's get into the rotations. Just a heads up, these are practical beginner combos designed for real encounters like Sword Trials and Hero's Realm, not infinite vitality, stationary training dummies. For PvE, we have combos tailored to your current Wolfchaser's Art tier level, and let's train some basic control first. Practice double strategic swords martial arts skill, quick swap to Heavenquaker Spear's martial arts skill. Quick swap for PC is using the scroll wheels on your mouse, and for controller is the down button. One more is strategic sword's special skill, crisscrossing sword. Deflect, special skill, crisscrossing sword. Repeat for a few times to get used to the timing. Now, for Wolfchaser's R tier 3 and below, start with Drunken Poet and Flute, animation cancel with a deflect, and cast the Strategic Sword's martial art skill twice. Quick swap to the Heavenquaker Spear's martial art skill. After gaining the River Flow buffs, hold your heavy attack to use the Drifting Thrust charge skill until you apply 5 stacks of Soul Shaken to the target. Cast Dragon Breath to cancel charged skill animation. Immediately cancel it after the first hit. Quick swap back to the Strategic Sword and unleash the Inner Balance Strike special skill, followed by 3 Crisscrossing Swords attacks. Cancel with a deflect right after the Crisscrossing Swords follow-up to skip the recovery animation. After the third special skill, repeat the cycle. Note that from the second rotation onward, you don't need to fully charge Drifting Thrust. Just lightly hold it until your character gains the tenacity effect to land the hit and reset your Soul Shaken duration. Simple for a beginner, right? For Wolfchaser's Art Tier 4 and Tier 5, start exactly the same way. Drunken Poet and Flute, cancel with a deflect, and cast the Strategic Sword's martial art skill twice. Quick swap to the Heavenquaker Spear's martial art skill to gain River Flow buffs. Hold heavy attack for Drifting Thrust until you have 5 Soul Shaken stacks, then cast Dragon Breath and cancel after the first hit. Swap back to the Strategic Sword for your Inner Balance Strike special skill and a Crisscrossing Swords follow-up. Now, quick swap to the Heavenquaker Spear and use the Sweep All special skill. Swap back to the Strategic Sword to use the special skill 2 more times before casting your martial arts skill. From here, swap to the Spear's martial arts skill for the River Flow buffs. Lightly hold the heavy charge skill to hit once and cast Dragon Breath. Swap to the Strategic Sword for 1 special skill, switch back to the Spear special skill, and follow with 2 hit Soaring Spin. And finally swap back to a Strategic Sword special skill before repeating the whole sequence. A bit tougher, right? No worries, because our final rotation is going to be way easier. For the Tier 6 Wolfchaser's Art rotation, start with Drunken Poet and Flute, animation cancel with a deflect, use the Heavenquaker Spear's light charge attack, and cast Dragon Breath. Quick swap to the Strategic Sword and use its martial arts skill twice, then quick swap back to the Heavenquaker Spear's martial arts skill to gain the enhanced River Flow effect. Quick swap back to the Strategic Sword and use your special skill plus Crisscrossing Swords. Quick swap back to the Heavenquaker Spear and use its special skill, immediately canceling with a deflect after the first hit. Then switch back to the Strategic Sword's special skill 1 more time before casting Dragon Breath. Let it burn twice, then cast the Strategic Sword's special skill with Crisscrossing Swords twice. From here, quick swap back to the Heavenquaker Spear and use its martial arts skill. After gaining the enhanced River Flow buff, quick swap back to the Strategic Sword and use 1 special skill with Crisscrossing Swords before casting the Strategic Sword's martial arts skill with Crisscrossing Swords. Immediately after, let Dragon Breath hit twice and follow up with the Strategic Sword's special skill twice. Now, quick swap back to the Heavenquaker Spear's special skill, then follow up with its martial arts skill. Once you have the buff, quick swap to 1 Strategic Sword special skill. Continue into the martial arts skill and Crisscrossing Swords, and finish with a double special skill. Quick swap to the Heavenquaker Spear's special skill and follow up with its martial arts skill. From here, you can repeat the entire rotation from the top or reset whenever you lose track of the boss. That's all for the PvE combos. Now let's dive into real player battles. For PvP, you can pick between Leaping Toad or Free Morph as your follow-up Mystic skills. For Leaping Toad players, start with 1 opening hit, 2 Strategic Sword martial arts skills, and follow up with 2 heavy attacks and Leaping Toad while holding the forward movement button. Deflect right after the second hit of Leaping Toad to animation cancel, quick swap to the Heavenquaker Spear's martial arts skill, add 1 light attack, and then use your dual weapon skill. Follow up with a 3-hit light attack combo, and the exact moment that 3rd hit registers, immediately cast your special skill plus Crisscrossing Swords and execute before finishing them off with Dragon Breath. If you prefer Free Morph, start with 1 opening hit, 2 Strategic Sword martial arts skills, and Free Morph. Immediately cancel after the first hit. Quick swap to the Heavenquaker Spear's charge skill, wait a split second, and right after the spear thrust lands, use your martial arts skill. Follow up with your dual weapon skill and 3 light attack. Immediately after that final hit lands, use your special skill and Crisscrossing Swords, then execute. Those are 2 perfect condition combos, but normally, you'll want to open combat with the Heavenquaker Spear's martial arts skill because of its built-in tenacity effect. If you open that way, just follow the usual rotation with these slight adjustments for Leaping Toad. Instead of quick swapping to the spear, add 1 light attacks and use your special skill the exact second the third hit's damage registers. For free Morph, after the animation cancel, quick swap to the Heavenquaker Spear's charge skill. Use your dual weapon skill and add an extra light attack before casting your special skill and execute. Now, if you have this specific PvP attunement, you can chain a double martial arts skill straight into Soaring Spin. And if you have this attunement, you can straight up spam the Strategic Sword special skill whenever you find an opening. There are plenty of other variations, so drop a comment down below if you guys want to see a dedicated PvP combo video, and congrats. If you watched all the way to the end, you are officially on your way to becoming an Umbra Master. Let me know if this video was helpful, and if you have any questions, drop them below. I'll see you in the next video.